the grand doors of Downton Abbey open one last time. The world of elegance, whispers, and unforgettable stories stands ready for its final curtain call. This is more than just the end of a series. It is the closing of a chapter that has lived in the hearts of millions. Every glance, every word, every silence inside those walls has led us here. The story of Downton Abbey began as a tale of tradition, duty, and the lives of those who lived upstairs and those who served faithfully below. The Crawley family carried the weight of their name and the pride of an entire estate. While the servants kept the rhythm of life moving behind the scenes, at first glance, they lived in two different worlds, but as the years unfolded, their lives became tightly bound together in ways no one could have predicted. The opening chapter introduced us to a household where the walls of status seemed solid. Yet in the quiet corners of Downton, bonds of trust and friendship began to break down barriers. The characters were more than their roles. The Earl carried the weight of legacy, but also the burden of change. Lady Mary, sharp and determined, became a symbol of strength at a time when women were fighting for a voice of their own. And beneath the grand ceilings, the staff lived their own triumphs and heartbreaks. Mr. Carson with his loyalty, Mrs. Hughes with her quiet wisdom, and Anna, who showed us the courage of love that endures through pain. From the very first episode, viewers were not only drawn to the beauty of the estate, but also to the raw humanity of the people who lived within it. The drama reminded us that while titles and duties shaped lives, the heart's desires, fears, and dreams made them human. Each character faced the winds of change. The rise of new technology, the struggles of war, the shifts in class and society. Downton Abbey became a living reflection of a world. Moving from one age to another, what made the beginning unforgettable was how these stories felt close to us. Even though the setting was distant in time and place, the emotions were not. Family conflicts, forbidden love, ambition, betrayal, loss, and hope. These were not just the struggles of the Crawleys or their staff. They were the struggles of anyone who has lived, loved, and dreamed. That is why the series resonated so deeply as the first season unfolded. It was clear this was not just a drama of one family, but a mirror held up to history. The sinking of the Titanic set the story in motion, a reminder of how fragile life and fortune could be. The world was shifting quickly, and Downton Abbey was caught in the current of change. From this very beginning, audiences knew they were stepping into more than a simple tale. They were entering a saga that would grow into one of the most beloved stories in modern television. Downton Abbey was not just a house. It was the keeper of memory, a place where the past and future collided. And it invited us all inside to witness a journey that would become timeless. Behind the polished silver, the grand banquets and the shimmering gowns, Downton Abbey was always about people. Not just aristocrats or servants, but human beings whose lives intertwined in powerful and unexpected ways. The heart of Downton did not beat in the walls of stone and marble. It beat in the moments of connection between those who walked its halls. The Crawley family showed us that wealth and privilege could not shield anyone from heartbreak. Love was tested. Loyalty was shaken. Dreams often collided with duty. Lady Mary, strong and commanding, often carried her grief in silence, yet her choices shaped not only her own future, but the future of the entire estate. Lady Edith, long in Mary's shadow, showed resilience that transformed her from the overlooked daughter into a woman who built her own destiny. And Lady Sybil, with her daring spirit, reminded us that the courage to follow one's heart can change a family forever. But Downton was never just about those who dined above the stairs. It was equally about those who worked tirelessly below. The kitchen, the servants' quarters, the hallways filled with hurried footsteps was where sacrifices were made and devotion was tested every day. Mr. Bates and Anna gave us one of the most moving love stories of all time. Their struggles against cruelty and justice and loss were not simply plots for drama. They were reflections of real human endurance. Their bond proved that even in the darkest moments, love can be an anchor. The bond between Mr. Carson and Mrs. Hughes was another heartbeat of the story. His stern rules and deep devotion balanced perfectly with her quiet compassion and wisdom. Together, they reminded us that dignity and kindness can exist in equal measure, and that love can arrive gently, even later in life. The ties between family and staff were often hidden in subtle gestures. A word of comfort, a glance across the room, or an act of unexpected kindness could carry more weight than grand speeches. These were the invisible threads that stitched the upstairs and downstairs worlds together. And while the classes remained divided by tradition, the bonds of shared humanity often blurred the lines. It was in these relationships that Downton Abbey reached its greatest strength. The series gave us moments of pure joy, like weddings and celebrations. But it also carried us through devastating heartbreak, from sudden losses to painful goodbyes. And through it all, the characters grew not only with each other, but also with us. The audience who followed their journeys as if they were our own family. The heart behind the walls of Downton Abbey was always beating, always alive, and always reminding us that even in the grandest of settings, it is love, trust, and connection that truly matter. Downton Abbey was never just a story of one house or one family. It was a story of a world in transition. A world where the old order struggled to survive as the future pushed forward without mercy. History itself became a character, knocking at the grand doors of the estate, bringing both opportunity and loss. The Great War changed everything. The Crawleys, once sheltered by wealth and tradition, were suddenly exposed to the harsh realities of sacrifice and survival. The estate was transformed into a place of healing, where wounded soldiers lay in the same rooms once reserved for elegance and celebration. War blurred the lines of class and privilege. A footman could be a hero. A lady of the house could become a nurse. And in those years, Downton showed us that even the most rigid traditions could bend when faced with the tides of history. But war was only the beginning. The arrival of new inventions, electricity, telephones, the motor car, brought whispers of change into the quiet halls. For some, these shifts were symbols of progress, a chance to embrace the future. For others, they were threats to a way of life built on centuries of certainty. The clash between tradition and modernity played out not only in the great dining room, but also in the kitchens and servants' quarters, where even the simplest changes in daily life carried meaning. The characters themselves became living reflections of this transformation. Tom Branson, the Irish chauffeur who dared to love Lady Sybil, embodied the voice of change, reminding the Crawleys that love cannot be bound by class or custom. His journey from outsider to trusted member of the family mirrored the larger movement of society itself, an age where boundaries were slowly breaking, and voices once silenced were beginning to be heard. Even Violet Crawley, the formidable dowager countess with her razor-sharp wit, could not stop the march of time. Her clever remarks often hid the truth that she, too, was watching her world fade away, and yet her humor and resilience reminded us that grace could exist even in the face of inevitable change. Downton Abbey's genius was in showing us that history is not only made in battlefields or parliaments, but also in homes, kitchens, and dining rooms. The estate itself became a symbol of a world holding on to the past while learning to live in the future. Every invention, every law, every social shift pressed against its walls, demanding adaptation. The story of Downton was never just about characters surviving history. It was about how history lived within them. Through their struggles, we were reminded that change is both painful and necessary. That no matter how grand a house or how noble a name, time will always move forward. And yet, in that forward motion, the story of Downton Abbey found its timeless beauty. At the heart of Downton Abbey were not the walls of stone or the titles written on paper. At its heart were the invisible threads of love, loyalty, and lost threads that bound every character together, no matter their place on the social ladder. It was these threads that gave the story its pulse, reminding us that no life is untouched by joy or heartbreak. Love came in many forms within the estate. There was the passionate, daring love of Lady Sybil and Tom Branson, love that defied tradition and challenged the rigid lines of class. Their union was more than romance. It was a symbol of courage, a declaration that the human heart cannot be silenced by rules or expectations. Then there was the steady, patient love of Bates and Anna. A love tested by injustice, by cruelty, and by the heaviest shadows of despair. Their devotion was not easy, yet it was unbreakable. Every trial they endured only proved that true love is not defined by ease, but by endurance. Loyalty, too, was a force that shaped the lives within Downton. The loyalty of Mr. Carson to the Crawley family, unshaken even when his own pride was tested. The loyalty of Mrs. Hughes, whose quiet wisdom carried the household through storms and silences. And the loyalty of the Crawley family to one another, even when pride or jealousy threatened to tear them apart. This loyalty was not blind. It was often strained, sometimes fragile. Yet it was in those moments of tension that loyalty revealed its greatest strength, standing firm when it was hardest to do so. But perhaps most powerful of all was the theme of loss. From the very beginning, Downton Abbey was shadowed by the reminder that nothing lasts forever. The loss of heirs. The loss of love. The loss of lives during the war. Each farewell left its mark, changing the characters in ways that were permanent. Matthew Crawley's sudden death left not only Mary broken, but also the entire household reeling with grief. It was a reminder that joy and tragedy can exist side by side, and that life can change in an instant. Yet even in loss, there was resilience. Every goodbye carved space for new beginnings. Every heartbreak revealed the strength to move forward. The beauty of Downton Abbey was in showing us that grief does not erase love, it deepens it. That loyalty is not weakened by loss, it is proven through it. And that even in moments of despair, life continues to weave new stories. Love, loyalty, and loss were never just themes of the show. They were its foundation. They reminded us that, whether in a grand estate or a humble home, these are the forces that define us all. And they ensured that the story of Downton Abbey would be more than entertainment. It would be a reflection of our own lives, our own struggles, and our own hopes. When the time came for Downton Abbey to reach its final chapter, the world held its breath. For years, audiences had walked the halls of the estate, laughed with its wit, wept with its tragedies, and carried its characters like old friends. The finale was not just the end of a television series, it was a farewell to a world that had become a second home. Behind the camera, the cast and crew knew the weight of the moment. These were not just actors stepping out of their roles. They were storytellers closing a chapter of their own lives. Every scene filmed for the finale was layered with meaning. Every glance, every touch, every spoken line carried the unspoken truth. This was goodbye. The Crawley family, gathered in joy and reconciliation, reflected the bond that had grown not only on screen, but also off. The actors had become a family themselves, bound by years of shared work, laughter, and tears. Their smiles in those final scenes were not only part of the script, they were the real emotions of people saying farewell to something extraordinary. The finale gave audiences what they longed for: resolution without erasing mystery, closure without breaking the heart of the story. Characters who had endured storms finally found peace. Strained relationships found healing. Love stories reached their promise. It was as though the writers knew that the audience, like the characters, needed a gentle parting and ending that would honor the years spent walking alongside. Downton Abbey, but more than the scripted ending. The finale was a celebration of the journey itself. It was a recognition that the story of Downton had always belonged to more than just the Crawleys. It belonged to the loyal servants, to the guests who came and went, and above all, to the audience who made the world of Downton a living memory. The millions who tuned in across the globe became part of its legacy. Proof that a story can bridge not just classes and centuries, but cultures and continents. As the final scenes faded, it was impossible not to feel the mix of sadness and gratitude. Sadness because an era had ended, and gratitude because it had ever been shared at all. The curtain fell, not in silence, but in celebration. For Downton Abbey, the grand finale was not a farewell to the past. It was a reminder that great stories never truly end. They linger in the heart, replayed in memory, passed from one generation to the next. The doors of the estate may have closed for the last time, but what echoed within them will always remain. The finale was not an ending. It was a promise that Downton Abbey will forever live in the hearts of those who walked its halls, both on screen and in spirit. Even though the final curtain has fallen, Downton Abbey did not truly end. A story like this does not fade when the last scene is played. Instead, it lingers, like the faint music of a ballroom, long after the dancers have left. It lives on in memory and conversation, in the quiet spaces of those who loved it. Downton Abbey gave the world more than drama. It offered a window into history, reminding audiences that the past is never far from the present. Through its grand halls and modest kitchens, it showed us the struggles of identity, the fight for equality, the pain of loss, and the hope of love that continues across time. These were not just stories of a family and their servants, they were stories of humanity itself. The legacy of Downton is also found in the way it reshaped television. It proved that historical drama could reach across oceans and capture millions. It's not with explosions or spectacle, but with quiet moments of truth. A conversation by the fire, a whispered confession in the garden, a glance that carried more weight than words. The show reminded creators and audiences alike that depth of character and authenticity of emotion can be just as powerful as any grand event. It also sparked new life to a genre often overlooked. Period drama became more than an escape into costumes and castles. It became a mirror reflecting our own questions about love, duty, and progress. People who had never before been drawn to stories of aristocrats and servants found themselves invested, weeping over losses, cheering for victories, and carrying the characters in their hearts. And then there's the cultural footprint. The phrases, the wit, the elegance of Violet Crawley's lines became part of popular memory. The sweeping image of the estate at sunrise is etched into television history. The legacy of Downton Abbey rests not only in its episodes, but also in the way it entered the everyday lives of viewers, inspiring conversations, costumes, and even renewed interest in history itself. Most importantly, Downton Abbey's legacy lies in its ability to remind us of something simple yet profound, no matter how divided people may seem by class, by time, or by circumstance. What unites us is always greater. Love, loyalty, hope, grief, these are not bound to one family or one era. They belong to everyone. And in giving us these truths, Downton Abbey secured its place not just as a television series, but as a timeless story. Its halls may be quiet now, but its voice continues. The estate may stand still in fiction, yet it moves endlessly in the hearts of those who walked its corridors through the screen. Downton Abbey lives on, not as a place, but as a memory carried across generations. As the story of Downton Abbey reaches its end, one truth becomes clear. Some goodbyes are not endings, but beginnings of memory. The estate stands tall in silence, its doors closed, its halls quiet. Yet in the minds of millions, those halls are still alive. They echo with footsteps, laughter, secrets, and tears. Every character we met, every moment we shared, continues to walk with us. Long after the screen fades to black dot, the finale was not simply about saying goodbye to beloved characters. It was about honoring the journey we took with them. It was about remembering how we watched Lady Mary's icy strength melt into vulnerability, how we saw Lady Edith rise from rejection into triumph, and how we felt the boldness of Lady Sybil's love still ripple through every generation of the Crawley family. It was about cherishing the humor and wisdom of Violet Crawley, whose words could cut and comfort all at once. And it was about never forgetting the quiet sacrifices of those who served faithfully, whose lives mattered every bit as much as the nobility above. Downton Abbey was more than a series. It was a companion. It gave us comfort in grief, joy in love, and meaning in the quiet details of life. For many, tuning in each week became a ritual, a moment to escape the rush of the world and step into a story that felt both distant and deeply familiar. And now, as the curtain falls, we are reminded that while shows end, the feelings they leave behind endure. The legacy of Downton Abbey is not measured by ratings or awards. It is measured by the hearts it touched, the tears it drew, and the inspiration it gave. It lives on in the countless viewers who still carry its lessons, that change is inevitable, that dignity matters, that love is worth the risk, and that every life, no matter its station, carries value. As we close the chapter on Downton, we do not leave it behind. Instead, we carry it with us, its grandeur, its sorrow, its beauty, and its truth. The estate may belong to fiction, but the emotions belong to us, and in that way, Downton Abbey will never fade. This is the gift of storytelling, that even when the lights dim and the final line is spoken, the story continues in memory, echoing forever. Downton Abbey's grand finale may mark the end of its tale, but its spirit will live on in every heart that opened its doors and stepped inside. The final bow has been taken. The curtain has closed. And yet for those who loved it, Downton Abbey will always remain timeless, unforgettable, eternal.